I'm Rebecca with 1C, and this is Silent Crash. Well, listener, the story continues to unfold in Michigan. As of today, Representative Green's bill remains stuck in the Insurance Committee, which is chaired by Representative Dare Rendon. Meanwhile, more patients are dying and losing care. You might recall from episode 3 that two men played a giant role in convincing the Democratic governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, to sign Public Acts 21 and 22 back in 2019. Before their involvement, Governor Whitmer was staunch in her public commitment to never harm those being cared for in the Auto No Fault program. One of those men was billionaire Dan Gilbert. He threatened Governor Whitmer that he would use his enormous profits from Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage, and real estate development projects in and around Detroit against her and Auto No Fault if she didn't sign the Auto No Fault reform legislation. Some information about his threats is a matter of public record because he shared it publicly. The Detroit News, ABC, Associated Press, Crain's, they all covered it. But I couldn't quite figure out why Dan Gilbert got involved. I mean, sure, this was a Republican initiative, and he does put his wealth behind Republicans. He gave $750,000 to Trump's inauguration, and he went to the White House for a visit. And he did an event with Ivanka Trump back in 2017. He also contributed to the campaigns of John Kasich and Chris Christie. But, as with other obscenely wealthy business owners who might need the ear of whomever is in the White House, he also reportedly gave to Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. So his Republican bona fides didn't seem quite strong enough for him to wade into the fray of the Auto No Fault reform fight. I mean, doesn't he have enough to do with overseeing Quicken Loans, Rocket Mortgage, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and his numerous real estate projects throughout Detroit? But then I ran across a headline. It appeared barely 2 months after Governor Whitmer signed the Auto No Fault reform legislation into law on the steps of the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. The headline on July 19, 2019, reads, "Industry Giants Quicken Loans, State Farm, Team on Mortgages." The article reads, quote, "State Farm insurance agents will use Detroit-based Quicken Loans, Inc.'s online mortgage service, Rocket Mortgage, to originate mortgage loans under a new exclusive agreement that joins the top home and auto insurance provider with the largest retail mortgage originator." Rocket Mortgage is building technology for State Farm that will come out over the next few months, the company said in a news release. Quote, "Through this alliance, we will be able to combine Rocket Mortgage's powerful mortgage processing and underwriting technology with the advice and strong relationships built from the power of the State Farm agent network." End quote. That's from Quicken Loans CEO Jay Farner. Housing and mortgage publication Housing Wire quantified the alliance between the two leaders in their fields as, quote, "massive." Of course, as so many of you have noted, it's about the money. That deal was a pretty sweet development for Rocket Mortgage, a company that was barely 4 years old at the time, and whose business was limited mostly to Gilbert's other company, Quicken Loans. State Farm says that its group of companies is the biggest auto and home insurance provider in the entire nation, with 83 million accounts and policies in auto, fire, life, health, and banking. With that kind of money and accounts grab on the table, I wonder if Dan Gilbert even spared a moment's thought to the community of catastrophic car accident survivors whose care depends on the Auto No Fault program into which they paid. Is he the kind of man who considers a few dead human beings as just the price of doing business? Only he can truly know that answer. He's been pretty quiet about auto no fault since his stroke just after its signing. But it seems prudent to also consider the man who was by Dan Gilbert's side in those threatening meetings. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan. Like Governor Whitmer, though, Duggan is a Democrat. That stands out to me because this legislation was written and championed by, and continues to remain unchanged in its implementation by, Republicans, like Senators Mike Shirkey and Lana Tice. We told you a bit about Senator Shirkey, the Senate Majority Leader, in Episode 5. An episode on Senator Lana Tice is coming. After serving all of the allowed terms over in the House of Representatives, including as chair of the Insurance Committee, Tice got elected to the Senate side. She has several roles in the Senate, one of which is chair of the Insurance and Banking Committee. Like Dare Rendon over in the House, a bill is not getting out of the Insurance Committee in the Senate unless Senator Tice allows it, or her majority leader, Mike Shirkey, overrules her. Anyway, that episode is coming. The thousands of dollars Tice took from insurance companies over the past few years, as well as her meetings and travel that tell a giant tale of their own, they've taken an inordinate amount of time to track down. But for now, let's keep our focus on Detroit's Mayor Duggan. He is on the record in numerous places decrying the outsized premiums that Detroit citizens were, and despite PA 21 and 22 still are, charged for car insurance. If he is to be believed, it is his main motivation for demanding reform and championing this legislation amongst his Democratic friends. He is painted as the man who loves Detroit citizens and is working hard on their behalf every day. But when I looked into whether the auto no-fault reform has helped Detroit citizens, I did not find stories of massive savings on insurance premiums. Instead, I found stories of pain and loss that, well, let me just tell you about them. One case that stands out to me came to my attention via the case manager. For privacy's sake, let's call the patient Kate. According to her case manager, Kate was hit by a bus in Detroit several years ago. She sustained extensive broken bones and injuries. Revision surgeries were needed, 11 in total. She was also left with a traumatic brain injury. Her thinking skills slowed, and she became easily overwhelmed. To cope with all the flooding of feelings, Kate reached out to substances, and her addiction escalated. Prior to PA 21 and 22, Kate was living in a residential care facility and had built a decent life again. Her addiction was well managed. She was sober. But the rate cuts of the new legislation left Kate's insurance company with a legal opportunity to stop paying the full rate for her care. The facility held out as long as it could, but like over 60 other companies, it came to the end of its financial rope. They provided Kate with 30 days' notice. Either she had to pay the difference between what her insurance company was paying and the actual cost of the care, or she had to leave the facility. Well, Kate did not have the money to pay what her insurance company refused. With no other options, she left the facility, and she headed to Detroit with an intention of finding her sister. She also found her way right back to the substances that would give her mental freedom from the situation into which she had been forced. Kate overdosed. She was taken to the emergency room, where she was resuscitated. She survived. The hospital had no reason to keep her, though, so Kate was released. And from there, no one knows what happened. Today, Kate is nowhere to be found. She is not at her sister's in Detroit. She could be on the streets of Detroit somewhere, or anywhere. She could be dead. She is definitely not in the facility where she was being cared for since getting hit by that bus in Detroit. She is most assuredly not living her life there, where she had food, shelter, heat, relationships, and the medical care she both needed and deserved. The $23 billion in the MCCA fund set aside specifically to meet the medical needs of accident survivors like Kate is no longer being applied for her benefit. The facility and other care providers who were helping Kate, well, they're left holding all of those bills now. Claims can't be made against a patient who is missing. There are so many examples just in Detroit of the havoc that Mayor Duggan and this legislation have wrought. Another one is unfolding even as I put together this episode for you. I found the man at the center of it just outside of Detroit.
My name is Brian Woodward.
And what city are you from here?
I am from Detroit.
And you're now living in where?
I am living in Special Tree, a rehab center in Romulus.
Now talk to me about your injury. What happened and how and when was it?
Back in 1983, we were a couple young kids just driving around doing dumb stuff. And we were driving too fast around the corner. And my friend lost control of his vehicle and we crashed. And I was thrown out. Some people might think I'm Superman, but I fly okay, but I don't land very well.
So what kind of injuries did you sustain then?
I right now I have fusion at 3, 4, and 5, but they call the injury a C4 injury, so I broke my neck, and I'm paralyzed from like the nipple line down.
Okay.
I can't move anything. My arms and my legs have no functional use as far as doing anything to help myself.
So you were a kid, a teenager when this happened?
I was 24.
You were 24. And how
24.
old are you now? I'm sorry.
62.
So what I had heard about you was that you rehabbed and you built a life for yourself after that accident. What did that look like?
That I did. With the help of some of the government agencies, there was a JTPA, Job Training Partnership Act back then, and my insurance company helped with some of the money needed, and so I went back to school. I first went back to Delta College, which I had went to before, and I had a associate's degree in fast food and family dining management, and I didn't think that would work. So I went back and I got a bachelor's in business administration and computer science. I did a couple years at Delta College in Bay City, and then I went to Northwood University in Midland, Michigan, and I graduated from there in 1990.
With a bachelor's in business administration?
Yes.
Okay, and so then what did you do with that degree?
I also graduated magna cum laude.
Of course you did. I feel like such a slacker talking to you already. Just because our listeners didn't get to see it, I want our listeners to know he came into the room that I'm in. He's in a wheelchair, very specialized looking one. I'm not an expert, but looks very specialized.
Yes, it is.
And you move this wheelchair via a straw-looking device that you put into your mouth.
Right.
And he all but parallel parked himself, y'all, which I cannot do with all of my function. And you were talking to us while you did this with this thing in your mouth. You just were like, this is where I need to go. Like, this is just how you move. So, of course, you got your degree after your accident. I'm not surprised. And then what did you do with that degree?
Well, after that graduation day, which was a very big moment in my life,
Mm-hmm.
I took the summer off and relaxed.
Slacker.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, a little bit before that, after um, my accident, my niece came home from school one day crying because she wanted to be on the baseball team, the Little League baseball team, and so she uh, went and they said that girls weren't allowed.
Mm.
And so I said, well, this is the night, the 80s at that time. So I said, girls are allowed. So I called up the coach. I'm like, what's the deal? Why are you excluding her? He's like, you want the job? I said, I guess so. So I coached Little League for 6 years.
You coached Little League for 6 years.
Yeah. Sometimes by myself, sometimes with friends.
While being paralyzed from your chest down.
Correct.
Brian finished college and began looking for a job in his field.
So I did a few interviews. One was actually in my van because I couldn't get in their building. So they had to come out to me and interview me.
Wow.
So that one I got rejected on because I'm sure they didn't want to make the accommodation.
Right. This
to
was
have
the
me work
80s?
there. This is the 80s.
He was eventually hired by Noetics, who contracted him out to Ford Motor Company to provide computer support for their timekeeping and work order system.
So I helped teach people how to use that, and I actually went to plants and taught them how to use the system and stuff.
For 30 years, Brian faithfully served Noetics and the Ford Motor Company.
I bought my own home in Detroit, and because it was a lot closer to where I was working, because I was working in Dearborn
So you weren't working out of your home. You actually went to an office every day?
every day.
So you bought your own home in Detroit
Yes,
and went to an office in Dearborn every day and did
Every-
your job.
yes.
And how long did that scenario go on before PA 21 and 22?
Up until COVID hit,
Okay.
and then I worked from home. Ford gave me some equipment to work from home. Plus, I used my own equipment to make it work. I had some uh, uh, rehab technology guy come and help me get some stuff set up. But for the most part, I could work totally independently at Ford and at home
So
with just the shuffling of papers and things like that.
So you had a life very similar to any of the rest of us who don't happen to be paralyzed from the chest down. You had a good job. You had a home you had bought. You'd been sent home to work during COVID like the rest of us. You had figured that out. You were doing what thousands of us, millions of us are doing. And then the reform law came along. And what happened?
Actually, I actually had a business too. I had bought a house and I was renting the house out. But,
Oh, okay.
so that's one more thing.
So you had a renter as well in your home? So you had that source of income too?
No, I had a second house.
Of course you did, because one house is not enough. You had two. I would say I'm shocked, but no, I'm not with you. Okay, so you had your house and another house and a renter in that house.
Correct.
And then PA 21 and 22 came along and they took effect. And what happened? When we come back, you'll hear how drastically Brian Woodward's life changed as a direct result of Public Acts 21 and 22, the legislation that Brian's own mayor, Mike Duggan, helped bring to fruition. I'm Rebecca with 1C, and you're listening to Silent Crash. Welcome back to Silent Crash. Before the break, I was talking with catastrophic car accident survivor and all-around amazing human, Brian Woodward. Despite the crash that left him at 24 years old, paralyzed from the chest down, Brian had carved out a good life. He owned 2 homes. He went to work every day. And when the pandemic hit, he worked from home like everybody else. For all intents and purposes, he had built a really good life. And then on July 2nd, 2021, key portions of Public Acts 21 and 22 took effect, cutting pay rates for healthcare to 55% of what they'd been in 2019. As we've shared on previous episodes here, healthcare workers can't afford to operate at the slashed pay rates that leave some of them earning less than the guy asking if you want fries with your order. The companies that employed them can't keep the lights on at these rates either, and they're being forced to discharge patients, and in over 60 instances, shut their doors entirely. The effects of the law are harmful and catastrophic, and that includes in Brian Woodward's life.
Well, I had to go on medical leave because the cuts cut into my the caregiver provider could no longer pay them what they were paying him before, and so none of my caregivers could work for that kind of money because they could go many other places and work for much more.
So you had a caregiver that would come to your home.
24/7, yes, the caregiver would come.
So that, and what kind of care did your caregiver render to you? What are the tasks they did?
Everything that I needed for daily living. They had to get me up in the morning, and I got up at 5:30 every morning, and they had to go with me to work in case I needed to be catheterized or, if I had any health issues or anything like that. And then when I got out of work, of course, did the normal things like grocery shopping and paying bills and all that fun stuff. And then from there, they would have to do range of motion exercises every day to make sure I'm limber enough to do that, and then get a shower like 3 times a week, and then they would put me to bed, and then that was usually after the exercise and all that stuff. It usually ended up being about 12 midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd turn around and get up at 5:30 again.
But Brian's caregivers couldn't stay on under the new slashed pay rates caused by PA 21 and 22. And so they had to quit.
Right.
So what did you do?
Well, then I had to scramble and find a place that would take me. And I went to a rehab facility where I'm at now. I had actually been here I'd been, in the rehab facility for about 4 months. And now I've tried to go back home with healthcare workers that were getting paid a little bit more. And they couldn't do all that work. They didn't want to bathe me and dress me and all that the other caregivers had done
Right.
for a lot of years.
Right.
And so they ended up dropping me, and I had to come back to a rehab facility again.
So you left your home, you went into this facility or a different facility that we're sitting in?
There was a different facility that I was there for a couple weeks.
So you first went into a different facility, you finagled a way to get back home and get some attendant care, but then they couldn't continue either, and so you went back into a facility a second time?
Yes.
When you were in whatever those facilities were, we've been told that many of the facilities that people are going to aren't equipped to care for people in your condition, and so they end up developing problems that require hospital care. Did you have that experience?
Yes, I had that experience many times. I had
Many times.
many times. Since July 1, I've spent at least 6 times in the hospital.
Can I ask for what and apologize for being so invasive?
Well, three of them was for sepsis, which is life threatening.
Do you for sepsis from developing bed sores?
Not bed sores, for bladder infections.
Okay.
Yeah, and just recently I've had to undergo surgery for a suprapubic catheter. And before that, I had what they call a Foley indwelling catheter because I could no longer do the intermittent cathing,
Mm.
which my 24/7 caregivers could do.
So again, I'm so sorry to be invasive. I want people to understand the impact on your life. So
Yes,
prior to the reform, you didn't have a catheter in you all the time.
that's correct.
You were catheterized when you needed to be catheterized,
Yes,
which was a few times a day.
yeah,
And you had attendant care to help with that when it needed to be done.
yes,
Now, though, because there is not 24/7 attendant care, you have had to have a catheter inserted. Is that right?
that's correct.
And you still need someone to monitor that catheter so that what you're saying doesn't happen. You don't develop an infection, you don't develop sepsis and end up back in the hospital. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so in the facilities, I know, we're in Michigan and we've been crazy careful with our team because COVID is rampant here.
Yes.
When you go into the hospitals, are there lots of COVID patients? Are you hearing about that?
Well, when I went into this last one to get the suprapubic catheter inserted, I was on the floor with um, the ICU team, and they had several people that were COVID positive.
Since PA 21 and 22 took effect on July 2nd, 2021, Brian has been in and out of facilities and hospitals for all but 6 weeks. So, in all that time, were you able to keep your job?
Unfortunately, no. I had to go on a medical leave in order to come to a facility because I couldn't do my job from the facility anymore. There was no place to have an office type setting. It was in my room, and about all I have in my room is a computer and a couple of phones.
If you're able to go back home, can you go back to your job?
Unfortunately, not. Um, One of the big three actually gave that part of the job away to India.
I understand.
So I was terminated while I was on medical leave.
So at this point, it sounds to me, and please set me straight if I've gotten it wrong, you had a life, you had a job, you owned real estate. Life was pretty good.
Life was very good.
And then the reform happened, and you're not in your home. You don't have your job anymore. Your job is gone. And I'm assuming that your bill at this facility is not getting paid any better than any other patient. So, what does your future look like now?
Well, this is a rehab facility, and it's not likely that I can live here permanently. So the only option that I can think of at this point is to go to a long-term facility, which they call nursing homes, which would be even less care than what I get here because they're not as trained with spinal cord injuries as they are here.
So, from your knowledge, there is not a facility that's residential, because we're sitting in a rehab facility right now and you clearly are rehabbed. You had rehabbed and built a life. This is not where you come and stay for 50 years,
Right.
but there isn't a facility where you could go and even live out the rest of your life, all your coming decades, because they don't have the care level that someone in your condition requires.
Right. They don't. The insurance companies don't pay for the care level that I require.
Can I ask who your insurance company is?
State Farm.
So let me ask you this, and I just want to apologize one more time because I'm being just so invasive, and I appreciate you being willing to share your experience with the audience so they can really understand. I know we do have legislators listening to the show, and I
Oh,
know that
good.
we have very close friends of the governor urging her to listen. So I'm hopeful that they are listening and hearing the impact of this legislation, because we also know they are being told by the IAM that there's no negative impact as a result of this legislation.
Yeah.
So it's important that they hear directly from the patients that are being impacted.
Right.
Um, so to that end, I want to ask you, if they were sitting here, if your governor were sitting here and or the legislators who were the architects of this bill, what would you say to them?
Um, with no expletives.
You can use expletives if you want to. You go right ahead.
No, I don't talk that way anyway. But um, you know, you've destroyed my life. My life has been totally destroyed. The intent of the no fault law in the beginning, and I have read the whole thing, was to restore someone back to as normal as possible. And you alluded to that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
is that I was doing things that, quote, normal people do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to have my life restored, and they have her governor, and I mean, the governor can do some kind of emergency thing, I'm sure, but she has not. And um, the governor also, why are you giving the money away from the MCCA fund when you know that it's there for our support, for our group in catastrophic injury area needs that for their care, for their daily care. Um, a lot of people don't understand that until they're affected by it, either a friend or a family or anything like that. Or if they go into that field, they'll see what's happening. Um, and as far as the insurance committees, it's like, why are you sitting on this? Why won't you let it go to the floor? Find out what the other representatives, the other senators think about this, and you know, get it fixed. There's uh, there's so many good things in the law as it was that have been destroyed. Companies been destroyed. People have died. I know of, you know, from a good source that at least 5 people have died. Um, I've come close several times, and so just get it through the committees and get it out onto the floor so people can vote on it. And then we have something else to look at
Right.
and possibly get our lives restored. I mean, eventually, if I have to end up going on Medicare, any money I've saved up is going to be gone. My houses will be gone because I can't return to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, that that goes. I'm a taxpayer. I'm community involved. Until COVID hit, I was very active in the community organization. Um, I I go to church. I sing in the choir. I'm very active in the church. I go hunting. I go fishing. All of this involves adaptive equipment of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
So we need money to pay for that adaptive equipment, and we need money to pay for having somebody help us out
And you paid for that.
day in and day out. Correct. Back in 1983, the contract was that I would be restored back to as close to normal as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I hate to, blow my own horn, but I came pretty close.
Yeah, I think you have every right to blow that horn.
But I've done town halls and told the people what was going on. But the education part of it is so small that the people of Michigan really need to know what they're buying and what they're getting into, because if they have a catastrophic injury now, they will not have the care because the companies aren't out there to provide the care. And with the family only being able to provide 56 hours, the people won't be able to bring their loved ones home.
Right.
And be able to take care of. I mean, I get taken care of way more efficiently and financially. It's cheaper than I'm sure living in this rehab facility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
that's an ironic situation. We keep being told that the bills were fewer when you were at home with attendants than they are when you're in a facility 24/7. So the idea that this is saving money in the immediate is false. So insurance companies obviously act in a way to make money. Yeah. So there has to be a long-term financial gain for them to be doing what they're doing right now. Because it doesn't make sense right now. It's thousands of dollars more expensive for you to be here than to be at home.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian, for coming on Silent Crash and sharing with us.
Thank you for interviewing me. I really, really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you guys and hearing you guys. It's very nice. Thank you very much for doing it.
Did you catch the name of Brian's insurance company? State Farm, he said. That's the very company that entered into a multi-million-dollar partnership with Dan Gilbert's Quicken Loans, right around the time the reform legislation was signed into law. Why are they apparently willing to spend thousands more for Brian's care in a facility than they were for him to maintain his life and have care at home? That doesn't make sense, does it? Well, not on the surface. But you know how sometimes it makes sense to spend a chunk of money up front and set yourself up to receive a bigger chunk later? And you know how sometimes it makes sense to spend a chunk of money now so you won't have to spend any at all later? Yeah, so do the insurance companies. We'll get further into that in a coming episode. I'm Rebecca with 1C, and this is Silent Crash. Thank you for listening.
Follow and subscribe to Silent Crash, the quiet unraveling of Michigan's auto no-fault and the destruction of lives, wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information on what you've heard here and how you can help, visit silentcrash.net. Silent Crash is a production of the 1C Story Network. The show is written by Rebecca Seitz and produced by her and Rebecca Bond Tucker. Post-production services by Zischer LLC. This show is supported by the generous donations of concerned individuals via the Silent Crash GoFundMe effort. Learn more about the 1C Story Network at just1c.com. That's JUSTONEC. www.thebrandonbrown.com.